Welcome, dear friends, to a gentle journey through 160 quiet, fascinating facts about Attack on Titan, that unforgettable story born from a young artist's imagination, shaped into a world of towering mysteries, distant horizons, and characters who carried the weight of fate with trembling hands and quiet resolve. Tonight, we'll drift softly through the origins of this series, the ideas that guided its creation, the subtle symbolism woven into its landscapes, the inspirations behind its characters, and the way this story grew, slowly, steadily, into one of the most deeply discussed and emotionally resonant works of its time. As we move through these facts, we won't dwell on battles or turmoil, but instead on creativity, intention, artistry, and the quiet humanity at the heart of the tale. Let your breathing soften. Let your shoulders grow a little lighter. Let the stillness of the night wrap around you like a warm blanket, carrying you gently toward rest. And if you enjoy drifting through soft stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and softly tell me where you're listening from tonight. Now settle in, ease into the quiet, and let us begin our slow journey into these tender facts from a world once surrounded by walls and wonder. Fact 1. In the quiet beginning of Attack on Titan, long before its pages reached readers, Hajime Isayama carried a quiet fascination with the feeling of distance, of standing before something vast, unknowable, and humbling. As a child living in a small, secluded town surrounded by mountains, he often looked up at their silhouettes, wondering what lay beyond. Those mountains would later soften into the symbolic idea of walls, boundaries between the familiar and the unknown. This gentle seed of curiosity became one of the earliest breaths of the series, not born from fear, but from the quiet ache of wanting to understand the world outside. Fact 2. Isayama mentioned that one of his early inspirations came from an encounter at an internet cafe, where he met someone whose communication style felt different from his own. The experience lingered with him, not as something upsetting, but as a soft reflection on how humans sometimes struggle to understand one another. That sense of emotional distance, of trying to read another person's intentions through subtle cues, eventually became part of the silent tension woven into the story's early foundations. It reminded him how fragile human connection can be, and how precious empathy becomes when it bridges the unfamiliar. Fact 3. When Isayama first imagined the world of Attack on Titan, it wasn't a grand, sprawling universe, but a quiet, small idea sketched on worn notebook paper. He pictured a place with old stone architecture, winding streets, and the warmth of community, something reminiscent of peaceful European towns he had only seen in photographs. These gentle, rustic settings became the backdrop for a story that, at its heart, explored humanity's longing for safety and belonging. Long before the tale grew complex, its world was simply a nostalgic, comforting place he wished to wander through, hand resting softly on the textured walls of imagined homes. Fact 4. Isayama was deeply inspired by manzai comedy, the traditional Japanese style of two-person comedic dialogue, but not for its humor. Instead, he admired the rhythm, the flow of words, the pauses, the subtle timing. That sense of pacing shaped how he crafted dialogue in his early drafts, creating conversations that felt natural, gentle, and human. He often spoke about how much he cherished quiet, simple exchanges between characters, moments when their emotions softened and the world seemed to slow. This quiet rhythm, almost like the rise and fall of breath, became a core part of how he shaped the series. Fact 5. Before the series took its final form, the very first concept drew loosely from Norse mythology, especially the idea of a distant, enclosed human realm surrounded by mysteries beyond. While the final story evolved into something more grounded, the early sense of myth, a gentle echo of ancient stories told around warm fires, remained. Isayama kept the feeling of a world shaped by old beliefs, unspoken traditions, and histories that drift just out of reach. Even in its earliest versions, Attack on Titan carried the soft resonance of something timeless, as though it were a story whispered through generations. Fact 6. Isayama submitted his early prototype to the Kodansha Manga Award competition when he was just 19. The draft was rough and unpolished, yet judges saw a spark, something quietly compelling, something with emotional weight. They encouraged him to refine it further, offering guidance with a gentleness that stayed with him. He later said the feedback felt like a warm light during a time when he often doubted his abilities. Knowing someone believed in his potential helped him continue shaping the story. This early encouragement became one of the tender stepping stones that carried Attack on Titan toward publication. Fact 7. In the very first prototype, the walls were not yet towering structures, but simple barriers symbolizing emotional distance and the separation between people and the unknown. Isayama originally imagined them as metaphors for how individuals sometimes build quiet walls within themselves, protective, familiar, and difficult to lower. Over time, these symbolic walls evolved into the grand architectural marvels known today, but their emotional root never changed. They remained a soft reflection of the human desire for safety, for boundaries that bring comfort, and for the quiet hope that one day understanding might gently open the way outward. Fact 8. The earliest character designs were delicate and minimalistic, shaped more by emotion than by detail. Isayama focused on the feeling each character carried, a softness in their eyes, a quiet determination in their posture, or a gentle heaviness in the way they stood. Even before he refined the art style, he imagined characters who carried warmth despite their hardships, people with small dreams, lingering hopes, and inner worlds shaped by longing. These early sketches, though simple, held a tender sincerity that continued to guide his designs throughout the series' development, shaping the emotional tone at its core. Fact 9. Though many imagine the series' origins as rooted in grand ideas, one of the earliest inspirations actually came from peaceful, everyday moments, watching people stroll quietly through his hometown, hearing the subdued hum of a countryside evening, and observing how soft light moved across old buildings as the sun set. These gentle scenes reminded him of how beautiful ordinary life can be. He wanted the story to honor that feeling, a celebration of simple human moments, of shared meals and familiar streets, of the warmth found in community. That gentle appreciation shaped the earliest emotional notes of the narrative. Fact 10. Isayama has often said that Attack on Titan began as a personal reflection on the feeling of being small in a vast world. Growing us in a remote place, he often felt surrounded by unseen distances, mountains, forests, and horizons that stretched quietly outward. Instead of fear, this filled him with wonder. The earliest drafts of the story captured this sense of standing at the edge of the known world, listening to the wind and feeling the soft pull of curiosity. It was a story born from yearning, from introspection, and from the gentle ache of wanting to understand what lies beyond. Fact 11. In the earliest stages of planning Attack on Titan, Isayama often worked late at night, when the world around him was quiet and the air felt still. He found comfort in those hours, when the day softened into silence. The glow of his desk lamp created a small circle of warmth in an otherwise dim room, and within that peaceful space, ideas flowed more freely. He later shared that night was when he felt closest to his characters, as though their thoughts rose softly from the quiet. Many of the story's earliest fragments were born under this calm, reflective light. Fact 12. Isayama's process was never rushed. He would sit for long minutes without drawing, simply imagining how a single moment in the story should feel. He thought about atmosphere first, the texture of air in a scene, the emotional temperature, the weight of a character's breath. Only after he felt the mood clearly did he begin sketching. This gentle approach meant that each panel was rooted in emotion long before lines touched paper. He believed that if the feeling was clear, the visuals would naturally follow, forming a quiet harmony between art and heart. Fact 13. In interviews, Isayama often spoke with humble softness about his artistic limitations. He felt his drawing skills were imperfect, sometimes unrefined, and this made him doubt himself. Yet those doubts created a tender honesty that shaped his style. Instead of striving for visual polish alone, he focused on conveying sincerity, simple, earnest expressions, subtle gestures, quiet moments between characters. Over time, readers grew attached not because the art was flawless, but because it carried emotion with raw, open vulnerability. His imperfections became part of the story's soul, giving it a warm, human touch. Fact 14. One of the earliest suggestions given to Isayama by editors was to soften certain story elements and let the emotional themes guide the narrative more gently. He listened closely, reflecting on how the world he was building could hold both mystery and tenderness. These suggestions shaped the pacing, encouraging him to weave in quieter conversations, soft memories, and small glimpses of everyday life. He realized that a story can be strongest not when it rushes forward, but when it breathes, allowing readers to linger in spaces of comfort, curiosity, and connection. Fact 15. Isayama kept a small notebook where he wrote down sudden thoughts, lines of dialogue, and gentle impressions that drifted into his mind throughout the day. Many of these notes were not full ideas, but fragments, like the color of morning light in a certain village, or a character's quiet smile when recalling an old memory. Over time, these fragments wove together into fuller concepts that shaped the emotional landscape of the series. The notebook became a quiet companion, holding the earliest seeds of scenes that later touched readers with their depth and warmth. Fact 16. Long before Attack on Titan reached publication, Isayama created simple practice stories, short, reflective pieces about ordinary people encountering symbolic challenges. These early works often centered around themes of longing, resilience, and the soft ache of growing older. Though the stories were never released publicly, they helped him discover the emotional tones he resonated with. Each small project became a stepping stone, guiding him toward the gentle introspection that would later define his much larger narrative. In these early exercises, he learned to listen to the quiet spaces between moments, letting them speak. Fact 17. During the story's development, Isayama visited historical sites and traditional towns, searching for architectural textures and atmospheric details that could bring his world to life. He admired the way old brick walls absorbed light, the softness of moss on aging stone, and the comforting narrowness of old alleyways. These details offered him a sense of calm and familiarity. When he returned home, he sketched structures inspired by these places, not exact replicas, but quiet echoes of the serenity they carried. These inspirations helped shape the story's setting into a place that felt both ancient and tender. Fact 18: Isayama drew significant emotional inspiration from themes of generational connection, how stories, hopes, and quiet burdens pass from one generation to the next. He reflected often on how people inherit dreams they did not choose, and yet gently reshape them into something new. These contemplations influenced character relationships throughout the series, creating stories that quietly examined how the past lingers like a soft imprint on the present. The idea of inheriting memories, both comforting and heavy, became a quiet thread woven into many characters' emotional journeys. Fact 19: Music played a gentle role in Isayama's creative routine. He enjoyed listening to calm, atmospheric tracks, melodies with soft crescendos, distant harmonies, and drifting rhythms. These pieces helped him stay connected to the emotional core of his story. He sometimes imagined scenes unfolding in slow motion, guided not by the visuals, but by the rise and fall of the music. These soundscapes allowed him to explore emotional depth without words, helping him imagine how characters might move, breathe, or reflect within the quiet spaces of their world. Fact 20: As the concept grew, Isayama spent long evenings refining the story's emotional direction, asking himself gentle questions. What does this world mean to its people? What does home feel like? How do moments of stillness shape who we become? Through this reflection, he found that the heart of the story was never about grand events, but about the delicate inner landscapes of its characters, their hopes, hesitations, and quiet strengths. This understanding gave the series its steady emotional pulse, guiding even its most dramatic moments back toward themes of humanity, longing, and quiet resilience. Fact 21: In the earliest drafts of Attack on Titan, the world was imagined as a quiet blend of old European architecture and the gentle stillness of rural Japan. Isayama wanted a setting that felt timeless, something neither fully modern nor entirely ancient, but suspended in a peaceful, dreamlike in between. He often described his world as a place where morning light rested softly on rooftops, where the scent of wood and stone lingered in the air, and where distant bells might echo through narrow streets. This atmosphere formed the emotional canvas on which the larger story would slowly unfold. Fact 22: When Isayama first began shaping the land within the walls, he imagined it with the softness of a pastoral map, villages scattered like quiet islands of life, connected by winding paths through fields and forests. He wanted readers to feel the warmth of these places: open windows, welcoming sunlight, gentle rivers, reflecting pale skies, and communities built around shared routines. These serene details gave the world a comforting texture. Even as the story evolved, those early images remained at its heart, grounding the narrative in a sense of home, belonging, and the delicate beauty of everyday life. Fact 23: The design of the walls shifted many times during development. In early drafts, they were modest structures, more symbolic than monumental. Over time, they grew taller, but their emotional roles stayed gentle and introspective. They represented safety, tradition, and the quiet yearning for something beyond. Isayama wanted the walls to carry an almost meditative stillness, standing like ancient guardians shaped by the hands of generations. Their curved lines and sun worn surfaces were imagined to glow softly in morning light, offering comfort, even as they hinted at mysteries beyond their boundaries. Fact 24. Isayama once shared that he spent a long time reflecting on what inside and outside meant emotionally. To him, inside represented familiarity, the scent of warm bread, the echoes of laughter, the predictable rhythm of days. Outside symbolized possibility, discovery, and the serene wonder of distant horizons. This gentler interpretation shaped how he built the world. Instead of dividing it into danger and safety, he imagined it as two realms of emotion, one rooted in memory and the other in imagination. This distinction guided the quiet balance of hope and longing that defined the series' atmosphere. Fact 25. The early geography of the world was shaped by sketches that resembled soft circles and flowing lines, almost like ripples on water. Isayama wanted the land to feel organic, shaped by time and nature rather than rigid design. He imagined landscapes with gentle slopes, forests that whispered with ancient calm, and rivers that traced their own lazy paths. These natural elements helped evoke a world that felt lived in and serene, a place where history unfolded slowly, like the turning of seasons, and where people's lives were intertwined with the quiet patience of the land itself. Fact 26. Before names were finalized, Isayama experimented with many possibilities, writing them in careful strokes to see how they looked and sounded. He wanted names that felt soft on the tongue, with syllables that drifted like murmured memories. Some early names were inspired by languages he admired, while others came from the gentle rhythm of made up sounds that simply felt right. He believed that a name should carry a quiet echo of the character's essence, something subtle, unspoken, and deeply personal. This sensitive approach gave the world a melodic quality, almost like a lullaby woven into its geography. Fact 27. Isayama paid special attention to the placement of towns and farmlands within the walls, imagining how people would naturally settle and build their lives over generations. He pictured communities growing around sources of warmth, sunlit fields, fresh water, and fertile soil. He liked to imagine villagers leaving their homes in the early morning, stepping into air that still carried traces of night, ready to tend to crops or prepare goods. These quiet, cyclical routines gave the world a grounded sense of peace and continuity, reinforcing the idea that life unfolds gently even in places surrounded by uncertainty. Fact 28. One of the more poetic early concepts involved a deep focus on nature. Asayama imagined trees standing like old storytellers, carrying the memory of countless seasons. He pictured forests where sunlight filtered through leaves like falling gold, and meadows where the wind moved grass in long, slow waves. Though the final story did not linger on these scenes as much as early drafts did, the emotional resonance remained. The world he built always carried a subtle undercurrent of natural beauty, an unspoken reminder of the quiet persistence of life. Fact 29. Isayama experimented with different shapes for the territory inside the walls, including circular patterns inspired by mandalas. He appreciated the harmony, balance, and symbolic calm that circular designs offered. To him, circles represented unity, safety, and a gentle sense of enclosure, like arms wrapped around a sleeping child. Although the final map took on a more practical arrangement, these early sketches influenced the emotional impression of the world. The curved lines, soft geometry, and flowing spatial design all helped create a setting that felt both enclosed and protected, yet quietly connected to something larger. Fact 30. A lesser known early idea explored the symbolic meaning of height and distance. Isayama imagined that the world inside the walls sat slightly elevated, like a plateau bathed in soft light, while the lands beyond it lay under a gentler, dimmer sky. He liked the idea that the world inside felt like a sanctuary lifted toward the sun, touched by warmth and clarity. Even though this concept did not appear explicitly in the final story, its emotional essence remained, a sense that the characters lived in a place illuminated by memory, tradition, and hope, standing quietly between what was known and what waited beyond. Fact 31. When Isayama first imagined the Titans, he did not think of them as fearsome beings, but as symbols of overwhelming emotion, feelings that rise larger than life, feelings that people struggle to express or understand. He described them as reflections of the human heart at its most vulnerable, unfiltered, unguarded, and exposed. Their presence was never meant to be harsh, but contemplative. They reminded him of moments when emotions become too big to contain, when someone trembles not from outside forces, but from the gentle ache of being overwhelmed. In this way, Titans became quiet metaphors for the parts of ourselves we do not always know how to hold. Fact 32. The way Titans moved, slow, staggering, almost dreamlike, was influenced by how Isayama observed people reacting during moments of deep confusion or exhaustion. He noticed that when someone is lost in thought or weighed down by emotion, their footsteps sometimes soften, their posture slackens, and their movements drift. He captured this softened, unfocused motion deliberately, wanting Titans to feel like wandering echoes of something once human. Their drifting presence reflected the fragile, unfixed state of beings caught between memory and instinct, like a dream flickering at the edge of waking. Fact 33. Even their expressions held meaning. Titans were given blank yet gentle, almost childlike faces, not to unsettle, but to evoke a quiet sense of absence, an emotional blank page. Isayama wanted their faces to feel like forgotten memories, familiar yet distant, close yet unreachable. Their soft, unfocused eyes symbolized moments when a person's emotions grow too heavy to articulate, when their gaze turns inward rather than outward. In this way, Titans resembled the tender fragility of a mind searching for clarity, trying to remember who it once was. Fact 34. Isayama once explained that the size of Titans represented emotional scale. Some emotions arrive small and manageable, like whispers drifting through the mind. Others rise tall and grand, overshadowing everything else. Titans of different sizes quietly reflected this spectrum. Smaller ones mirrored mild worries and passing uncertainties, while larger forms embodied deeper, more consuming feelings, longing, regret, or unresolved sadness. Instead of depicting these concepts literally, he shaped them into symbolic beings whose stature reflected emotional magnitude, offering readers a gentle metaphor for the invisible weight people sometimes carry. Fact 35. The way Titans appeared suddenly in the story was inspired by how emotions often surface with little warning, like memories returning when one sees an old photograph or hears a familiar melody. Isayama liked the idea that titans emerged not with aggression, but with the quiet unpredictability of an old feeling resurfacing. Their sudden presence was meant to mirror the way the human heart works, how certain thoughts rise from within, how feelings can appear uninvited, and how inner experiences sometimes feel larger than the world around us. Fact 36: their unusual proportions were designed intentionally to evoke the gentleness of imperfection. Isayama believed that things slightly off balance, slightly asymmetrical, often feel more human than things drawn with precision. Titans carried uneven shapes to reflect how people are shaped by experiences, how life molds us in unique ways, leaving impressions that are not always symmetrical or refined. He wanted their appearance to feel symbolic of the human journey, imperfect, evolving, and touched by time. In this sense, Titans stood as quiet reminders that beauty often lies in the unpolished and the unexpected. Fact 37: in early sketches, Isayama drew Titans with softer, rounder silhouettes, almost cloud like in form. Though the final designs became more defined, the emotional origin of those early sketches remained. He wanted their bodies to feel more like shapes than creatures, like abstract representations of emotion rather than beings with precise details. Some of his early Titan drawings looked almost like shadows cast in late afternoon light, blurred at the edges, drifting with dreamlike softness. This abstract quality helped establish the Titans not as literal entities, but as emotional echoes woven into the world's quiet symbolism. Fact 38: Isayama drew inspiration for the Titan's presence from moments of stillness he observed in nature, rocks standing against time, trees bending gently in the wind, the calm weight of mountains lingering on the horizon. He imagined Titans as natural forces given shape, towering like hills, unmoving like ancient cliffs, appearing and disappearing like distant clouds. This idea gave them a serene, elemental quality. Though their role in the narrative evolved, their conceptual foundation remained rooted in nature's quiet, overwhelming scale. They represented the timelessness of things larger than individual lives. Fact 39: the idea that Titans were once human came from a place of emotional reflection rather than harshness. Isayama was fascinated by the concept that people contain different sides of themselves, some visible, some hidden, some forgotten. The Titans symbolized these hidden or suppressed selves, exaggerated until they became impossible to ignore. He once said that the transformation was meant to feel like an inward turning, a person becoming a physical expression of their inner state. This interpretation added a gentle layer of melancholy to their existence, giving them depth without dwelling on conflict. Fact 40: even the way Titans disappeared held symbolic meaning. Instead of leaving traces behind, Isayama designed them to fade gently, dissolving, drifting, or evaporating like morning mist touched by sunlight. This soft departure represented release, the quiet lifting of heavy thoughts, the way worries sometimes dissolve after a night's rest, or how painful emotions slowly fade with time. He wanted their departure to feel peaceful, as though the world exhaled gently as they vanished. This imagery created a sense of renewal, reminding readers that even overwhelming emotions eventually find calm. Fact 41: the three great walls in Attack on Titan, Maria, Rose, and Sina, began as simple ideas in Isayama's early notes, little more than circles drawn with a quiet, thoughtful hand. He imagined them not as barriers of fear, but as symbols of protection, tradition, and the stillness of life passed down through generations. He envisioned their surfaces warmed by the sun, their stones holding memories like gentle whispers. In his mind, the walls were not imprisoning structures, but guardians, ancient, calm, and steadfast. They carried the emotional weight of places people learn to trust, where safety feels like a familiar embrace. Skiori 2. Isayama's fascination with circular shapes influenced the wall's iconic design. He found something soothing in the completeness of a circle, its sense of unity, its absence of corners, its seamless flow from one point back to itself. A circle reminded him of cycles in nature, seasons, turning, tides shifting, the steady passage of time. He wanted the walls to feel like part of that natural rhythm, enclosing the land in a shape that suggested continuity and harmony. The circular structure became a soft metaphor for communities holding one another close, forming an unbroken bond shaped by shared history. Fact 43. When imagining what life inside the walls felt like, Isayama pictured gentle routines unfolding beneath their shadow. He saw small markets opening in the morning, children walking along cobblestone paths, and families preparing quiet meals as warm light filled their kitchens. These peaceful scenes helped him understand the wall's emotional purpose. They were not only physical structures, they were boundaries that held memories, spaces where laughter had echoed, where stories had been told, where love had quietly grown. This tenderness gave the walls a presence that was far more than stone. They felt like living parts of the world. Fact 44. The height of the walls was chosen not for spectacle, but for symbolism. Isayama wanted them to represent the vastness of the unknown. Their towering silhouettes mirrored the awe one feels when standing before mountains or when gazing up at an ancient cathedral. He imagined people looking upward at the walls and feeling a blend of security and wonder, a sense that the world was larger than they knew, yet still held them gently within its boundaries. The height became a poetic reminder of perspective, that beyond every known horizon lies another waiting quietly to be discovered. Fact 45. The names of the walls, Maria, Rose, Sina, were chosen for their gentle, almost melodic quality. Isayama believed that names shape the emotional impression of a place, and he wanted these monumental structures to carry a softness that balanced their scale. Each name evokes imagery associated with beauty, memory, and delicate strength. Maria suggested a timeless maternal warmth. Rose brought to mind petals, fragrance, and quiet resilience. Selena carried an elegant, stately air. Together, the names created a harmonious trio, giving the world a sense of grace that softened its stark boundaries. Fact 46. Isayama drew on architectural inspiration from old European fortresses and walled cities, but he softened these ideas into something gentler, less rigid, more symbolic. He imagined walls with weathered textures, touched by countless seasons, each stone warmed by sunlight and cooled by drifting winds. He pictured patches of moss growing in hidden corners and vines tracing delicate lines across the surface. These small details helped him create walls that felt lived in and quietly ancient, like guardians who had watched over generations with patient, unchanging calm. Fact 47. In Isayama's early sketches, the walls were meant to have walkways lined with lanterns that glowed softly at dusk. Though this detail did not become a central part of the story, the idea remained close to his heart. He liked imagining gentle lights flickering against the stone, creating warm golden trails in the twilight. These lanterns symbolized hope, a way of illuminating paths, even when night settled around the land. The concept reflected his belief that safety is not only about protection, but also about guiding light, soft and steady, in times of uncertainty. Fact 48: the emotional relationship between the people and the walls was central to the world building. Isayama wanted the inhabitants to feel gratitude toward the walls, seeing them not as obstacles, but as ancient protectors whose presence shaped their sense of identity. He imagined yearly celebrations honoring the walls, with families gathering to share memories and stories. These imagined traditions explored how communities form bonds, not only with each other, but with the places that shelter them. Through this lens, the walls became almost ceremonial, symbols of shared heritage and enduring unity. Fact 49: one of the more poetic ideas Isayama considered was the notion that the walls carried a quiet music, tones that could only be heard emotionally, not physically. He imagined that the stones held the hum of centuries, vibrations from countless moments of human life, unfolding within their boundaries. This soft emotional resonance inspired him as he wrote scenes that took place near the walls. To him, they were not silent. They offered the subtle comfort of something timeless, like the gentle hum of wind through tall grass or the low echo of waves against a shore. Fact 50: the purpose of the walls evolved throughout development, but at their emotional core, they were always meant to represent the human instinct to create sanctuaries, places where one can breathe, rest, and build a life with others. Isayama saw them as symbols of the balance between security and longing. They protected people, yet also inspired gentle questions about what lay beyond. This duality reflected the way humans navigate their own inner boundaries, feeling safe within familiar walls while quietly dreaming of distant horizons. The walls became a tender metaphor for the spaces we inhabit within ourselves. Fact 51: Aaron Yeager began as a simple sketch in one of Isayama's earliest notebooks, a small drawing of a young boy gazing quietly toward a distant horizon. Isayama imagined him as someone who felt a gentle ache for something just beyond reach, the way a child might look through a window on a rainy afternoon, wondering what the world looks like on the other side of the mist. Before Aaron had a name or a role, he existed as an emotion, a soft longing, a yearning to understand the vastness of life. That quiet feeling became the foundation of his character. Fact 52: Aaron's personality was shaped by Isayama's reflections on childhood. He wanted Aaron to embody the purity of early dreams, those first sparks of curiosity that arise when one begins to sense the world's breadth. He imagined Aaron lying in a field of tall grass, watching clouds drift slowly across the sky, wondering how far they traveled, how many places they passed over. Aaron's story grew around that gentle curiosity, representing the moment when a child's imagination stretches beyond familiar boundaries, reaching for the edges of the world with quiet wonder. Fact 53: his name, Aaron, carries a soft, almost musical quality that Isayama chose carefully. He wanted a name that felt warm and grounded, something that suggested sincerity and depth. In Turkish, Aaron can mean saint or wise person, and although Isayama did not choose it for literal meaning, he liked the gentle resonance it carried, a name that felt humble, human, and emotional. It had a whisper like softness he found soothing, a sound that lingered like the final note of a quiet lullaby. Fact 54: Aaron was designed with subtle visual cues meant to express sensitivity beneath determination. Isayama drew his eyes slightly larger than average, allowing them to hold a soft brightness, like reflections on water. He gave him a posture that hovered between tension and vulnerability, as though he were balancing between childhood innocence and the stirrings of deeper thought. Even his hair, often drawn in gentle, loose strands, represented an unrefined, natural spirit. Aaron's design was meant to evoke a heart caught mid bloom, still discovering its shape. Fact 55: Isayama created Aaron as a character who carried strong emotions, not in a dramatic way, but in a deeply human, introspective sense. He imagined Aaron feeling things with a kind of fullness many people experience in quiet moments: wonder that makes the chest feel light, sadness that lingers softly, hope that glows like morning light behind closed eyelids. These emotional tides shaped Aaron's journey. He was meant to represent the way young people often feel the world intensely, sensing its beauty and its possibilities with a heightened tenderness. Fact 56: One of Isayama's earliest notes about Aaron described him simply as a boy who wants to move forward. This movement was never meant to be forceful, it was symbolic of emotional growth. It represented the gentle push of curiosity, the soft pull of dreams, the quiet desire to step beyond one's comfort. Aaron's story was shaped around this symbolic movement, the way a person slowly opens themselves to new experiences, the way horizons beckon softly, and the way each step forward becomes a small act of self discovery. Fact 57: Aaron's relationship with the outside world was designed to reflect the universal feeling of standing at the threshold of possibility. Isayama imagined him often sitting near windows or in open fields, letting fresh air brush against him as he dreamed of distant landscapes. The outside world, to Aaron, was not a place of fear, but of wonder, like a quiet melody carried on the wind. In this sense, Aaron became a symbol of yearning, representing the moment when a young heart senses that life holds mysteries waiting gently beyond the familiar. Fact 58: Isayama crafted Aaron's emotional journey to mirror the way people change as they grow older. He believed that childhood dreams often shine with clarity, like stars reflected on calm water, but over time become filtered through experience and introspection. He wanted Aaron to reflect this gradual shift, the soft evolution from simple wonder to deeper contemplation. Aaron's character arc was designed not as a straight line, but as a gentle curve, like the path of a leaf drifting through air. Each stage of his development carried its own quiet emotional truth. Fact 59: Aaron's bond with Mikasa and Armin was inspired by the peaceful friendships that form in early life, connections built on shared days, quiet understanding, and simple companionship. Isayama wanted their relationship to feel like a warm trio of lights, each steadying the others in subtle ways. He imagined them walking home together in the evening, talking about small things, feeling comfort in the presence of one another. These gentle moments were among the earliest scenes he visualized, helping him understand the emotional heartbeat of his story. Fact 60: Aaron represented for Isayama the idea of a person who carries both softness and determination, two qualities that complement rather than oppose each other. Aaron's spirit was meant to reflect the quiet truth that yearning does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it is the gentle tug in the chest when watching birds fly overhead, or the warm ache of wanting one's life to be meaningful. Through Aaron, Isayama explored the tender balance between dreaming and becoming, between knowing oneself and discovering new truths with each passing moment. Fact 61. Mikasa Ackerman began, in Isayama's earliest notes, as an image of serenity, someone whose presence felt calm, grounded, and quietly luminous. He imagined her standing beneath a pale sky, hair moving softly in the wind, eyes reflecting the stillness of distant fields. Before she had a role in the story, she existed as a feeling, the embodiment of quiet strength, the kind of strength that does not announce itself, but hums beneath the surface like the gentle thrum of a heartbeat. Mikasa's earliest origin was this peaceful, its emotional silhouette, drawn from the essence of calm itself. Fact 62. Her design was inspired by Isayama's admiration for characters who hold their emotions in quiet, meaningful ways. He liked the image of someone who carries depth without needing to express it loudly, someone whose inner world is vast, like a lake beneath moonlight, revealing its beauty only to those who take the time to look closely. Mikasa's emotional reserve was never meant to be cold. It was meant to be warm and steady, like a candle kept carefully inside a lantern, glowing softly even in the gentlest breeze. Fact 63. The name Mikasa came from Isayama's interest in historical motifs. He was inspired by the Japanese battleship Mikasa, which itself was named after Mount Mikasa in Nara, an ancient sacred mountain associated with sunrise and protection. Though his intention was not literal symbolism, he appreciated the peaceful imagery these sources carried. The name felt strong yet gentle, simple yet elegant. It carried a quiet sense of dignity, like distant hills touched by early morning light. Isayama chose it because it felt grounded, graceful, and resonant with the soft strength he wanted her to represent. Fact 64. Mikasa's scarf was one of the earliest emotional symbols Isayama imagined for her. He pictured it as an object infused with warmth, something soft, comforting, and familiar. He liked the image of fabric wrapped gently around someone's shoulders, like a memory woven into thread. The scarf became a representation of belonging, connection, and the warmth we hold on to during long seasons of change. Whenever he sketched Mikasa with the scarf, he imagined the quiet comfort it brought her, like a soft reminder of a time when life felt simple and safe. Fact 65. Mikasa's personality was shaped by Isayama's reflections on people who love deeply but express their affection with restraint. He admired those who show care through presence rather than words, who remain steady, reliable, and quietly attentive. Mikasa's emotional language became this quiet devotion. She symbolizes the kind of love that does not demand, that does not clamor, but exists like a steady flame glowing gently through the years. Her strength came not from force, but from a deep, unwavering tenderness shaped by memory and gratitude. Fact 66. Her physical design, strong posture, steady gaze, and graceful movement was inspired by martial arts practitioners Isayama had observed. He admired the way they carried themselves, balanced, calm, centered. Their movements flowed like water, unhurried yet purposeful. He incorporated this sense of fluidity into Mikasa's body language, imagining her motions as quiet extensions of her inner tranquility. She moves the way a thoughtful person might breathe, smooth, steady, and filled with presence. This quiet physical grace helped shape her into a character whose strength felt natural and unforced. Fact 67. Isayama envisioned Mikasa as someone deeply connected to the idea of home, not in the sense of a physical place, but in the sense of people, those who give us warmth, meaning, and gentle grounding. He imagined Mikasa as someone who finds comfort in shared meals, familiar voices, and simple rituals. Her emotional journey was shaped by this longing for closeness, this desire to hold on to the moments that make life feel whole. Everything about her, from her silence to her dedication, grew from this soft yearning for a circle of warmth she could call her own. Fact 68. In developing Mikasa's character arc, Isayama reflected on how people blossom when given a safe space to be themselves. He wanted her growth to feel like the slow opening of a flower, each petal unfolding in its own time, revealing softness beneath strength. Her journey was not about change through force, but about gentle self discovery. Isayama imagined her sitting quietly beneath a tree, feeling the breeze shift through the leaves, slowly realizing that she carried within her not just strength, but vulnerability, gentleness, and the capacity for her own dreams. Fact 69. Mikasa's role within the trio of Eren, Mikasa, and Armin was designed with emotional balance in mind. If Eren represented yearning and movement, and Armin represented thoughtfulness and imagination, Mikasa was the grounding presence, the quiet anchor. She symbolized the calm center of their shared world, the steady light that steadied their path. Isayama liked imagining the three of them sitting on a hillside at dusk, their silhouettes framed by fading sunlight, Mikasa quietly holding the moment together just by being there. This emotional harmony shaped their earliest interactions. Fact 70. For Isayama, Mikasa's essence could be captured in a single image, someone standing at the edge of a field, hand resting gently at her side, eyes softened by memory, the sky glowing pale gold behind her. She represents steadfast love, quiet resilience, and the beauty of a heart that remains gentle even in a complex world. He once described her as a peaceful strength, a character who carries the weight of her emotions with grace. Mikasa, in the end, became not just a character, but a reflection of the quiet power that lives within tenderness itself. Fact 71. Armin Arlert began as a quiet idea in Isayama's mind, a character shaped not by physical presence, but by the soft, luminous quality of thought. Isayama imagined someone who saw the world through a lens of wonder, someone who looked at the horizon and felt not fear, but a gentle pull, as though the sky itself were calling to him. Before Armin had any defined role, he existed as a spark of curiosity, a warm breath of imagination. He was envisioned as the child who sits on a hill at sunset, legs pulled close, dreaming quietly of lands yet unseen. Fact 72. Armin's earliest personality notes described him simply as a gentle soul. Isayama wanted him to carry a softness that felt refreshing, like the first breeze of spring drifting through an open window. He imagined Armin as someone who sought understanding over confrontation, someone whose thoughts flowed like calm rivers rather than rushing storms. Armin was born from the idea that quiet minds often hold the deepest dreams, and that hope can be strongest in those who speak softly. His gentle nature became a grounding light in the world Isayama was building. Fact 73. His name, Armin, was selected for its light, almost airy sound. Isayama liked names that felt smooth and delicate, names that drifted like whispered stories or soft melodies. Armin had that quality, simple, warm, and bright. It felt like a name carried by wind, touched by faraway skies. Though Isayama did not choose the name for any specific meaning, he appreciated how it resonated emotionally. It held the gentleness, thoughtfulness, and quiet hope that would come to define Armin's character. Fact 74. Armin's design was intentionally delicate. Isayama gave him soft facial features, hair that framed his face like strands of sunlight, and eyes that seemed to hold an entire dreaming world within them. His gaze was drawn with a slight upward tilt, suggesting a constant reaching toward ideas, toward possibilities, toward horizons. This upward gaze became symbolic of the way Armin's mind naturally ascended beyond everyday life, drifting into realms of imagination and reflection. His visual form became a poetic expression of a spirit that looked toward brighter skies. Fact 75. Armin's emotional core was shaped by the idea of gentleness as strength. Isayama believed deeply in the quiet resilience of sensitive people, the way they endure with tenderness rather than force, the way they protect not with walls but with understanding. Armin was created to embody this kind of strength, the kind that grows like moss on stone, quietly, persistently, beautifully. His softness became a central theme, reminding readers that the calmest voices can carry the deepest truths, and that warmth can be as steadying as any physical power. Fact 76. Books played an important symbolic role in Armin's creation. Isayama imagined him as a child who cherished stories, someone who found comfort in pages that spoke of faraway oceans, shining cities, and peaceful landscapes untouched by walls. He pictured Armin turning pages slowly, savoring every description, letting words gather inside him like fireflies in a jar. Books became a metaphor for his inner world, full of light, possibility, and quiet courage. Through reading, Armin's dreams grew, shaping him into someone who believed in wonders beyond what he had seen. Fact 77. Armin's bond with Eren and Mikasa was intentionally crafted as a triangle of complementary hearts. Isayama saw Armin as the dreamer, whose imagination balanced Eren's yearning and Mikasa's steadfastness. He imagined the three of them sitting on grass-covered hills, sharing thoughts about the world and the sky. Armin's voice, weaving images that made distant places feel close. These early imagined scenes helped Isayama understand how Armin fit emotionally into the story, not as background, but as the quiet thread that tied their shared dreams together. Fact 78. Isayama designed Armin to reflect the gentle courage found in those who dare to feel deeply. He admired people who experience the world with vulnerability, whose emotions flow openly and honestly. Armin's sensitivity was meant to be a form of bravery, an openness that allowed him to connect with others, to imagine more compassionate futures, and to see beauty even in difficult circumstances. Isayama once described this kind of courage as the bravery to be soft, and Armin became the embodiment of that quiet philosophy. Fact 79. Armin's dreams of the ocean carried deep symbolic meaning. For Isayama, the ocean represented the vastness of possibility, the soft, endless horizon that extends beyond fear, beyond familiarity, beyond limitation. He imagined Armin longing for the ocean, not in a desperate way, but in a peaceful, yearning sense, like someone listening to a distant song carried by the wind. The ocean became a metaphor for all the things one hopes to experience in life: beauty, freedom, discovery. Armin's dream was meant to remind readers of the gentle power of hope. Fact 80. Above all, Armin symbolized the truth that even in worlds shaped by uncertainty, There are hearts that continue to imagine warmth, connection, and gentle futures. Isayama created him to be a quiet light, a character who carries softness through every stage of life, whose inner glow never dims. He once described Armin as a breath of fresh air, someone who sees the heart of things rather than the surface. Through Armin, Isayama explored the delicate beauty of imagination, reminding readers that in every quiet thought there lies the beginning of a new horizon. Fact 81. The Survey Corps was first imagined by Isayama not as a force or a regiment, but as a symbol of longing, the soft, persistent desire to explore the unknown. In his earliest sketches, he drew silhouettes of figures standing quietly on distant hills, cloaks fluttering in calm wind, gazing toward wide horizons. These images felt peaceful, almost meditative. He imagined the Survey Corps as dreamers wrapped in fabric, people who carried the quiet courage to step beyond familiar boundaries. Their earliest conceptual identity was rooted not in action, but in gentle curiosity, like wanderers tracing the edge of the sky. Fact 82. The uniforms were designed to look simple and grounded, inspired by rustic clothing found in old European illustrations. Isayama wanted them to feel handmade, stitched with care, worn with use. The fabric was imagined as sturdy but soft, like cotton canvas brushed by years of sunlight. He wanted viewers to feel that these garments absorbed stories, early mornings, long walks, shared conversations. The jackets were drawn to sit neatly on the shoulders, creating a sense of calm discipline. The overall aesthetic reflected an old world gentleness, as though each uniform carried a sense of history and warmth. Fact 83. The green cloak, perhaps the most iconic part of their design, was created with the imagery of wind and nature in mind. Isayama liked the idea of fabric that moved freely, something that billowed and swayed like leaves on quiet mornings. He saw the cloak as a comforting layer, wrapping its wearer in a soft embrace, whispering of freedom and open fields. The color green was chosen for its soothing quality, evoking forests, grasses, and the peaceful stillness of earthbound places. The cloak became a gentle symbol of hope and exploration. Fact 84. The wings of freedom, elegant and symmetrical, were drawn to resemble feathers caught in a breeze. Isayama wanted the emblem to feel uplifting, even serene. Not forceful wings, but delicate ones, shaped with soft curves and quiet intention. He pictured them as symbols of dreams, taking flight not through power, but through pure longing. When he first sketched the emblem, he used light strokes, imagining it printed on parchment or sewn into cloth by careful hands. The emblem became a tender expression of aspiration, an image of hearts reaching upward. Fact 85. Even the belts and straps, often overlooked by viewers, were designed with a gentle purpose. Isayama wanted them to resemble the bindings found on hiking gear or old traveling satchels. They represented preparedness, but not in a harsh or militant way. Instead, they symbolized the small rituals people perform before embarking on meaningful journeys, tying laces, fastening buckles, adjusting scarves. These quiet, intentional movements reflect mindfulness. The belts became tiny echoes of anticipation, the soft moments before stepping outside into the world. Fact 86. The boots worn by the Survey Corps were inspired by European riding boots, chosen for their timeless, simple shapes. Isayama liked the soft curve at the top, the smooth line running along the side, the way the leather would gently crease with each step. He imagined the boots as companions, carrying their wearers through grass, stone, and soil, collecting tiny traces of the world along the way. He saw them as grounded symbols, connecting the characters to the earth with each gentle footfall. The boots thus became a metaphor for steady progress. Fact 87. The vertical maneuvering gear originally began as a simple sketch of harnesses inspired by rock climbing equipment. Isayama was fascinated by the beauty of ropes, buckles, and symmetrical straps, how they form patterns around the body. Before the gear was ever tied to movement, he imagined it as a kind of wearable sculpture, wrapping the wearer in intricate lines and curves. He appreciated the visual grace of these designs, how they created a sense of balance and harmony. The gear's earliest form was less a tool and more an artistic exploration of form and structure. Fact 88. When animators adapted the gear for motion scenes, they infused it with a sense of floating lightness. They designed movements to resemble birds gliding, leaves drifting downward, and the gentle sway of tree branches. Even in dynamic sequences, they tried to preserve a feeling of effortless flow, as though the gear allowed its user to dance through air rather than rush through it. The creative team wanted the gear to feel dreamlike, almost lyrical, shaped by the rhythms of wind and sky. The result became one of the series' most poetic visual signatures. Fact 89. The Survey Corps. Horses were drawn with great affection by the animation team. They wanted them to feel warm, loyal, and expressive, companions rather than tools. Many animators referenced nature documentaries and spent time observing real horses to capture the softness in their eyes, the gentle sway of their tails, and the peaceful cadence of their steps. These horses represented tranquility and trust. They symbolized calm journeys through open fields, the steady heartbeat of travel, and the quiet bond between humans and animals. Fact 90. Behind the scenes, one of the guiding creative philosophies for the Survey Corps was the idea of moving toward gentle hope. Writers, designers, and animators kept returning to this phrase during production. To them, the Survey Corps was not defined by struggle, but by yearning. The soft, persistent desire to understand a world larger than one's own. They shaped every detail, from cloaks to emblems to skyward gazes, around this peaceful intention. The core became a metaphor for inner exploration, for stepping beyond one's boundaries with a heart guided by curiosity and a longing for light. Fact 91. In his earliest world-building notes, Isayama described the lands outside the walls as a vast quietness stretching in every direction, a phrase meant to evoke the feeling of standing somewhere open and untouched, the air moving softly across fields that seemed to go on without end. He imagined these outer regions as gentle expanses filled with uninterrupted horizons. Before any maps or nations existed, he thought first in sensations, the warmth of sunlight on open ground, the distant shimmer of water, the hush of wind rolling over plains. The outside world began as a serene emotional landscape, an echo of freedom whispered through space. Fact 92. The first maps Isayama sketched were drawn with light pencil strokes, intentionally soft and loosely defined. He wanted the land to feel mysterious, but not threatening, more like a dream someone hasn't fully remembered. Countries were represented as gentle shapes, coastlines as relaxed curves. He drew rivers like wandering trails, drifting through terrain as though exploring on their own. These early sketches were not about borders or politics, but about the soothing rhythm of geography itself. Gentle slopes, quiet lakes, and faraway mountains resting peacefully against the sky. 93. One of Isayama's inspirations for the outside world was the landscapes he had seen during childhood walks. He often spoke of fields stretching beyond his hometown, places where tall grasses brushed against the knees and paths curved softly toward distant woods. These early memories grounded his imagination. When he pictured open spaces beyond the walls, he thought of the feeling of standing somewhere breezy and bright, hearing nothing but the gentle rustling of leaves. This sense of natural quietude became a guiding influence in how he shaped the outer lands. Fact 94. The idea of a shoreline existing far beyond the walls came to him during a moment of reflection at a lake near his hometown. He watched the sunlight glimmer softly across the water's surface, creating tiny sparkles that looked like scattered stars. That gentle scene stayed with him. He imagined characters discovering similar sights, the peaceful glow of water meeting sky, the silent rhythm of waves brushing the shore. The ocean became one of the earliest fixed ideas in the lore, not as a destination of peril, but as a symbol of wonder, limitless and calming. Fact 95. When designing faraway cities, Isayama envisioned architecture that blended both new and old elements, inspired by wandering through historic Japanese streets and observing photos of European towns. He liked buildings with gentle roof lines, soft colors faded by sunlight, and windows that seemed to hold stories. The cities outside the walls were drawn with this textured warmth, places where cobblestones felt smooth from generations of footsteps, and where the evening light cast golden hues across quiet avenues. Even in their complexity, these imagined cities felt soothing, woven with a sense of lived-in calm. Fact 96. Nature beyond the walls was meant to feel varied but peaceful. Forests were drawn as layered canopies of soft green, the kind that create cool shade and gentle rustling when the wind passes through. Rivers were imagined as slow and winding, reflecting clouds drifting lazily above them. Meadows were drawn with tall flowers swaying softly, their colors muted like watercolor paintings. Isayama wanted the natural world outside to evoke a sense of harmony, a reminder that even vast lands hold pockets of stillness and quiet beauty. Fact 97. The cultures hinted at in distant places were crafted with subtlety, shaped around emotional impressions rather than detailed histories. Isayama wanted the viewer to sense diversity without needing intricate explanations. He imagined different regions having their own gentle customs, tea shared quietly in shaded gardens, music played on soft nights, festivals filled with lantern light drifting upward like fireflies. These glimpses were meant to suggest that beyond the known world, life flowed in many peaceful forms, each shaped by its own rhythms of time and tradition. Fact 98. When creating Marley and Other Nations, Isayama drew inspiration from historical eras marked not by conflict but by cultural interplay. Times when architecture, clothing, and ideas traveled quietly across continents. He observed how styles from one region influenced another, how craftsmanship traveled through trade routes, and how languages borrowed words from distant lands. He imagined Marley's cities with wide boulevards, gentle street lamps glowing at dusk, and neighborhoods woven together with a blend of old and new aesthetics. These details were meant to create a sense of depth, a world shaped by shared human experiences. Fact 99. The landscapes connecting these nations were essential to the emotional atmosphere of the story. Isayama envisioned long roads stretching between settlements, brushing past groves of trees and rolling hills. He imagined the soft crunch of gravel beneath footsteps, the whisper of wind sweeping across grasslands, the gentle call of distant birds. These environments were designed to evoke the feeling of slow travel, journeys filled not with urgency, but with quiet reflection. Each path, each vista, represented the simple beauty of moving through the world at a peaceful pace. Fact 100. Above all, the world beyond the walls was meant to symbolize possibility. For Isayama, it represented everything that lies just beyond the edges of understanding, those spaces that feel too wide to fully grasp, yet comforting in their openness. The lands outside the walls were drawn with the intention of soothing the imagination, a reminder that even in stories shaped by uncertainty, there exist landscapes of calm, beauty, and endless horizon. He wanted readers to feel that the world, no matter how large, still holds gentle secrets waiting quietly in the distance. Fact 101. The idea of Titan shifters began as a quiet thought in Isayama's mind, the notion of people who carried something vast and mysterious within them, like hidden worlds resting gently beneath the surface of an ordinary life. He imagined this not as a force or a burden, but as a symbol of inner transformation, the quiet truth that every person has layers of self that unfold slowly over time. Before the concept had rules or structure, it existed simply as an emotional metaphor, the softness of dormant potential, waiting in peaceful stillness to be understood. Fact 102. Isayama's earliest sketches of Titan forms were surprisingly tender. He drew silhouettes with long, gentle curves, shapes that suggested a sense of ancient mystery rather than intensity. These outlines were inspired by classical sculptures he admired, statues with graceful proportions and serene expressions carved into marble. He wanted the Titan shifters to feel myth-like, as though they belonged to a distant age where the boundary between dream and reality was thinner. Each early sketch carried the softness of a figure emerging from fog, calm, and enigmatic. Fact 103. The idea that Titan shifters inherited memories came from Isayama's fascination with how families pass down quiet traditions, lullabies, recipes, customs, and whispered stories. He imagined memories drifting gently through generations like lantern light, passing from one hand to another. This concept was never meant to be frightening. It was symbolic of how the past gently shapes the present, how people carry the echoes of those who came before them. The Titan inheritance became a soft metaphor for ancestry, for the invisible threads that bind hearts across time. Fact 104. The shifting process itself was conceptualized with a sense of inner awakening rather than transformation. Isayama imagined it as a symbolic moment when a person encounters a deeper truth within themselves, the way someone might pause during a peaceful walk, suddenly overcome with clarity or a soft realization about life. The idea grew from the feeling that inside every person lies a quiet reservoir of strength, memory, and possibility. Shifting became a poetic gesture, representing the unveiling of the hidden self. Fact 105. Isayama designed each Titan shifter to reflect the emotional essence of its inheritor. He believed that people carry certain feelings more strongly than others: wonder, determination, protectiveness, yearning, introspection, and he translated these qualities into subtle design choices. A Titan might have features that suggested openness, stillness, warmth, or gentle resilience. He wanted the forms to feel like mirrors, held up to the deepest corners of the characters' hearts, shaping their outer appearance with quiet symbolism. Fact 106. One of Isayama's guiding creative principles was that Titan shifters should feel ancient, almost like natural forces that had existed long before the story began. He imagined them as part of the world's quiet folklore, the kind of myths passed down in soft whispers during long winter nights. He pictured early cultures speaking of giant figures walking through fields of mist, leaving footprints that filled with rainwater. This myth like aura helped inspire their timeless visual design, a balance between humanity and the distant echo of something older and grander. Fact 107. When designing the Attack Titan, Isayama wanted its appearance to carry a sense of forward motion, not aggressive, but purposeful, like a traveler who always walks toward the horizon. Its form was shaped around the idea of progression, the gentle push of time, the quiet insistence of dreams, urging someone to keep moving. He gave it features that felt elongated and expressive, as though carved from determination itself. This titan reflected the soft, persistent yearning of those who wish to grow, to reach, to discover new parts of themselves. Fact 108. The founding titan was drawn with a sense of distance and quiet grandeur. Isayama imagined it as a figure standing on the boundary between memory and myth, like an ancient mural or a deity from old folklore. Its design was meant to feel ceremonial rather than overwhelming, a symbol of heritage, ancestry, and the slow drift of history over centuries. He imagined it enveloped in an aura of stillness, as though it carried stories older than language itself. In this way, the founding Titan became a gentle embodiment of time's quiet passage. Fact 109. The colossal Titan was inspired not by power, but by the calm weight of monumental art. Isayama looked at photographs of statues carved into cliffsides, figures that stood with serene expressions, watching silently over landscapes. He was moved by how these sculptures felt, both immense and peaceful, their presence softened by weather and time. The colossal titan's size was meant to evoke the stillness of these ancient monuments, the way they loom gently over the world, offering a reminder of history and the lasting imprint of human imagination. Fact 110. Above all, Titan shifters symbolized for Isayama the quiet truth that every person carries a world within them, memories, hopes, fears, dreams, and countless unspoken thoughts. They were created not as beings of force, but as poetic reflections of the human condition. Isayama wanted them to feel like metaphors for inner landscapes, the tenderness of childhood memories, the soft longing for connection, the deep pull of personal growth. Each Titan became a living symbol of emotional truth, gently reminding readers that within every heart lies something vast, mysterious, and quietly beautiful. Marley began as a quiet idea in Isayama's early notebooks, drawn not as a place of tension, but as a distant land filled with soft complexity, a nation shaped by history, tradition, and the slow passage of time. He imagined Marley first as a collection of landscapes, gentle coastlines brushed by evening light, wide fields rippling beneath warm breezes, and cities where architecture carried traces of different eras. Marley was conceived as a place where stories collected like layers of sediment, each generation leaving behind quiet marks that shaped the next. Before its role in the narrative became defined, it existed simply as an emotional environment, a world formed by accumulated memory. Fact 112. Marley's cultural tone was partly inspired by the old world charm of early 20th century Europe. Asayama was drawn to the softness of aged photographs, sepia tones, cobblestone streets, tree lined avenues, and buildings with tall windows that let in afternoon light. He wanted Marley to feel familiar, yet dreamlike, as though seen through a foggy lens. This gentle blend of influences created a nation that felt rooted in history, wrapped in a quiet aesthetic where train whistles echo softly and newspapers rustle in calm morning air. Marley's world became a tapestry woven with nostalgia and understated elegance. 113. One of Isayama's earliest design goals for Marley was peaceful social texture. He imagined citizens strolling through shaded parks, sitting beneath open air cafes, and sharing conversations beside fountains or in the soft glow of street lamps. These ordinary movements, slow walks, quiet talks, gentle routines, helped him shape Marley's atmosphere. He wanted viewers to sense that Marley was built on rhythms that flowed through daily life. The sound of footsteps on pavement, the warmth of bustling marketplaces, the calm hum of cities settling into evening. Fact 114. The architecture of Marley was shaped by Isayama's interest in blending industrial motifs with natural beauty. He liked the contrast of metal railings beside flowers growing between bricks, the way old iron bridges curve gracefully over calm rivers, and how cityscapes look softened when touched by trees. Marley's buildings were drawn with tall frames and ornate details, suggesting artisanal craftsmanship. Even factories and warehouses were imagined with large windows that let sunlight spill in, turning working spaces into scenes filled with comforting brightness and shadow. Fact 115. Marley's clothing styles were created with attention to texture and warmth. Isayama imagined wool coats draped over shoulders, scarves wrapped gently around necks, and gloves worn on crisp mornings. He liked clothing that seemed tactile, fabrics that looked soft, cozy, and lived in. He studied early 1900s fashion to give Marley's citizens an appearance that felt timeless yet approachable. Their attire reflected calm elegance, long skirts flowing with movement, hats casting gentle shadows on faces, and vests layered beneath coats to evoke a sense of quiet refinement. Fact 116. Marleyan music, though never explicitly heard in the story, was something Isayama often visualized as part of the world. He imagined orchestras playing in spacious halls where the sound swirled like warm currents, or street musicians performing soft melodies on violins under gaslight. He pictured lullabies sung at bedtime, piano tunes drifting from open windows, and the gentle hum of harmonies echoing through cultural spaces. Music represented the emotional heart of Marley, the part of its identity shaped by creativity, artistry, and shared experience. Fact 117. When building Marley's educational atmosphere, Isayama imagined schools filled with large chalkboards, wooden desks polished by time, and tall shelves lined with books worn at the edges. He envisioned classrooms where sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating pages as students read quietly. This environment symbolized Marley's connection to history and knowledge. The education system was imagined not as rigid, but as reflective, a place where students absorbed lessons shaped by generations, where learning was intertwined with tradition and gentle curiosity. Fact 118. The natural environments surrounding Marley were essential to its identity. Isayama envisioned rolling hills stretching out in muted greens, coastal areas brushed by calm tides, and forests where trees stood tall like ancient guardians. He often thought of soft morning fog drifting between branches, or sunlight shimmering on the surface of streams. These landscapes served as emotional touchstones, reminders that beyond Marley's cities, there lay peaceful expanses where nature continued its slow, soothing cycles. This connection to land helped root Marley in a sense of timelessness. Fact-making Marleyan festivals were conceptualized as celebrations filled with warm light and gentle togetherness. Though few were shown directly, Isayama imagined lanterns glowing in twilight, music drifting through open plazas, and families gathering to share meals under strings of lights. He envisioned parades filled with soft colors, children carrying small paper decorations, and storytellers sharing old tales beneath festival banners. These events symbolize the heart of Marleyan culture: unity, tradition, and the quiet joy of communal rituals preserved through time. 120. Above all, Marley was created to feel human, a place shaped not by grand events, but by small, universal experiences. Isayama filled it with subtle textures: laundry swaying on balconies, cafe windows fogged by warm drinks, quiet conversations shared on park benches, and distant bells marking time. He wanted Marley to hold an atmosphere of gentle realism, grounded in the rhythms that make ordinary life meaningful. Through Marley, Isayama explored how nations are built, not only on history and structure, but also on the soft moments that people carry with them: memories, traditions, and the comforting rituals that turn places into homes. Fact 121. Eldia began as a distant concept in Isayama's early notes, shaped not as an empire or a system, but as a quiet, ancient world wrapped in layers of mist and memory. He imagined it first as a landscape before imagining it as a nation, a place where mountains rose like soft silhouettes in the morning light, and valleys curled gently beneath drifting clouds. Eldia, in its earliest form, was less a political idea and more a feeling: the sensation of standing before old ruins covered in moss, sensing stories beneath stone that had been shaped by centuries of wind and rain. Its foundation was built on the atmosphere, a peaceful reverence for history. Fact 122. Isayama imagined Eldia's ancestry as a tapestry woven through generations, each thread representing a quiet story passed down gently through time. He pictured elders sharing tales beside warm hearths, voices soft and rhythmic, carrying the weight of memory in tender tones. These oral traditions became the emotional backbone of Eldia's lore. Rather than focusing on power or conflict, he envisioned lineage as something personal and sacred, like a cherished family recipe or an old melody hummed through generations. Eldia became a symbol of continuity, of stories woven so deeply into identity that they shimmer gently beneath the surface of the present. Fact 123. Emir Fritz was conceived as a figure rooted in mythic serenity rather than intensity. Isayama imagined her standing beneath a wide night sky, surrounded by soft starlight, her silhouette calm and contemplative. He drew inspiration from mythological archetypes associated with creation, nature, and ancient wisdom, figures who embody quiet beginnings rather than dramatic origins. Emir's presence in the lore was meant to feel like the hush of dawn before the sun rises, or the stillness found in deep forests. She symbolized the quiet spark that begins a long story. Fact 124. The ancient Eldian villages were conceptualized as peaceful communities built around natural landscapes, homes nestled beside gentle streams, gardens filled with herbs and flowers, and gathering spaces shaded by tall trees. Isayama imagined Eldian life flowing with the rhythm of the seasons: soft snowfall in winter, warm breezes in summer, harvest gatherings in autumn, and blossoming meadows in spring. He wanted Eldia to feel deeply connected to nature, as though the land itself shaped the culture with its quiet patterns. This sense of harmony infused Eldia with a pastoral, almost dreamlike atmosphere. Versículo 125. Eldian spirituality was imagined as something calm and introspective. Isayama pictured rituals performed in quiet groves, where people lit lanterns shaped like blossoms or leaves, letting their glow drift gently into evening air. These practices represented gratitude, a soft acknowledgement of the unseen forces that guide life. Eldian myth was not built around fear, but around serenity, the idea that the world holds mysteries meant to be sensed rather than understood. Isayama wanted the spiritual core of Eldia to reflect nature's peacefulness and the deep comfort found in belonging to something ancient and enduring. Fact 126. When imagining Eldia's architecture, Isayama drew inspiration from old world villages where stone walls met timber frames and where roofs were shaped gently to guide rainwater into quiet channels. He admired buildings that looked hand built, their materials carrying the warmth of human touch. He pictured Eldian homes with sunlit windows, woven rugs, wooden tables marked by years of use, and decorative carvings telling soft stories. This style created a sense of timelessness, homes that felt lived in, comforting, and touched by generations. Fact 127. Eldian symbols, such as crests and motifs, were conceived as abstract reflections of natural elements. Isayama liked designs that resembled waves, roots, branches, or windswept patterns. He imagined artisans carving these shapes into pottery, weaving them into textiles, and painting them onto wooden doors. Each symbol carried gentle meaning: growth, continuity, harmony, memory. These designs helped him shape Eldia as a culture that cherished the quiet stories found in nature's forms, turning them into visual poetry woven into everyday life. Fact 128. Language played a secret role in Eldia's world building. Though viewers rarely heard it, Isayama imagined Eldian speech as soft and musical, built on flowing syllables that felt like streams winding through rocks. He pictured lullabies sung in this ancient tongue, their notes rising and falling like gentle waves. He thought about how certain words might hold multiple layers of meaning, the way real world ancient languages often carry emotions and cultural values embedded within them. This imagined language added a subtle depth to Eldia's identity, making it feel like a culture shaped by poetry. Fact 129. The idea of Eldian memory, the way stories, experiences, and ancient truths are passed across generations, was meant to mirror the quiet ways families preserve their past. Isayama reflected on how people inherit traits from ancestors they've never met: gestures, ways of speaking, habits, and subtle emotions. He translated this into Eldia's lore as the transmission of heritage through time. This concept was not meant to be mystical in a frightening sense, but symbolic of the gentle echoes that live within people, reminding them they belong to a long, unbroken line of life. Fact 130. Above all, Eldia represented for Isayama the idea of a civilization shaped by memory, nature, and quiet resilience. It symbolized the way cultures endure through both change and continuity, holding on to the stories that define them. Eldia was imagined as a place where history is not loud or overwhelming, but quietly woven into daily life, like the scent of wood smoke in an old home or the distant ringing of evening bells. Through Eldia, Isayama explored the beauty of rootedness, the comfort of tradition, and the gentle truth that even ancient worlds can feel soft and full of grace. 131. Isayama once described Eldia as a civilization shaped by echoes rather than events, meaning he imagined its history not as loud turning points, but as quiet ripples spreading across time. He thought about how small traditions, tender habits, and simple stories can shape an entire culture more deeply than grand moments ever could. In his early sketches, he drew families sitting beneath open skies, elders sharing memories in gentle voices, and children listening with half dreaming eyes. He wanted Eldia to feel like a place where the past lived softly, hovering like warm breath on a window pane, shaping the present in subtle, loving ways. Fact 132. The idea of Eldian seasons played an important role in the world building notes. Isayama imagined winters not as harsh, but as quiet months of reflection, where homes glowed softly with lantern light, where meals were slow and comforting, and where the world outside fell into a peaceful hush. Summer was imagined as a time of long golden evenings, with soft breezes drifting through open windows and gatherings held under leafy boughs. Each season had an emotional texture, and these shifting moods helped him imagine how Eldians thought, celebrated, remembered, and dreamed. Their culture, he believed, flowed gently with the rhythm of the earth itself. Fact 133. Eldian storytelling traditions were inspired by the notion that every family carries its own constellation of memories. Isayama pictured parents telling children tales of ancient heroes whose courage was quiet rather than bold, heroes who listened deeply, who walked gently through forests, who tended to the world rather than trying to change it. These stories emphasized humility, kindness, and awareness. He wanted Eldian narratives to feel warm, like bedtime tales whispered softly beside a crackling fire. In this way, Eldia was built not upon dominance, but upon tender, interwoven stories that shaped the hearts of its people. Fact 134. In Isayama's early notes, Eldians celebrated an annual ritual called Night of the First Fire, imagined as a moment of serene unity. Villagers would gather in a wide field as twilight deepened, forming a circle around a single lantern placed in the center. Its flame represented memory, glowing quietly, never flickering too strongly. People would close their eyes and think of their ancestors, offering silent gratitude for the life that had flowed down through generations to reach them. This celebration was never meant to appear in the manga directly. It served instead as emotional inspiration, helping Isayama feel the depth of Eldian spirituality. Fact 135. Isayama envisioned Eldian clothing as soft, practical garments woven from natural fibers, often dyed in earthy colors like warm browns, muted greens, gentle blues, and soft creams. He imagined seams hand-stitched with simple patterns, passed down from parent to child, each stitch representing continuity and care. He liked the idea of clothing that looked lived in, comfortable textiles that carried the faint scent of open fields or sun-warmed wood. This visual detail shaped the quiet, grounded feel of Eldian daily life, helping him imagine the atmosphere of a culture built on warmth and familiarity. Fact 136. The Eldian calendar, though never shown explicitly, was imagined by Isayama as a gentle system guided by natural cycles. He pictured months named after stars, winds, plants, and soft celestial events, each name carrying its own poetic resonance. He imagined days marked by peaceful rituals expressing gratitude in the morning light, honoring the quiet of dusk, and pausing at midday to breathe deeply and observe the world. This calendar helped him understand Eldia as a civilization deeply attuned to time's gentler rhythms, measuring life not by urgency, but by presence and reflection. Fact 137. The idea of lineage paths, the spiritual threads connecting generations, was inspired by the way memories seem to travel within families. Isayama reflected on how a person may inherit their grandmother's quiet laugh, or their father's way of pausing before speaking, or a distant ancestor's gentle patience. These small inheritances fascinated him. He transformed them into a symbolic notion of Eldian connectedness, the idea that lives are linked softly through time, sharing unspoken emotions, echoes of mannerisms, and a sense of belonging that transcends the boundaries of one lifetime. Fact 138. The Eldian practice of creating memory tapestries formed another unseen piece of the world building. Isayama imagined artisans weaving long panels of soft fabrics, their hands moving slowly as they threaded colors into patterns representing important family moments, arrivals, births, friendships, turning points, or treasured beginnings. These tapestries hung in warm living spaces, moving slightly in the evening breeze, each thread reflecting a quiet story. Though never shown, this idea helped convey the emotional depth of Eldian culture, a reverence for personal history preserved gently through art. Fact 139. Music played a symbolic role in the shaping of Eldian identity. Isayama imagined traditional instruments that produced warm, mellow tones, soft flutes carved from light wood, stringed instruments with a soothing resonance, and hand drums played with tenderness rather than force. He pictured melodies drifting across twilight fields, woven into celebrations, harvests, and peaceful gatherings. These imagined sounds helped him feel the emotional world of Eldia more clearly, a culture where music was not performance, but a quiet expression of gratitude, unity, and memory. Fact 140. Perhaps most remarkable is the way Isayama viewed Eldia not as a lost empire, but as a reminder. In his private notes, he described it as a symbol of how every civilization carries stories, traditions, and emotions shaped gently over time. Eldia represented continuity, the human desire to remember where we came from, to honor our roots, and to hold onto the threads that connect us to those who lived before. To him, Eldia was a tender metaphor, a reminder that history is not merely recorded in grand events, but in the quiet rhythms of everyday life, the soft choices of ordinary people, and the memories that linger like warm shadows, passed from hand to hand through generations. Fact 141. In early drafts, Isayama imagined Eldia as a world where stone carried memory. He pictured ancient pathways lined with smooth, time softened rocks, each one bearing the faint imprint of countless footsteps. He liked the idea that these stones had listened to generations passing by, hearing quiet songs, whispered stories, and private conversations carried on evening walks beneath glowing skies. This concept never made it into the manga, but it shaped the emotional texture of Eldia, a civilization where even the landscape felt tender and full of remembrance. Fact 142. Isayama once described the Eldian worldview as a kind of gentle, circular thinking. Rather than imagining life as a straight line, he thought Eldians would see it as a slow turning wheel, seasons returning, traditions resurfacing, stories being retold with small variations. He imagined families gathering each year to repeat the same soft rituals, comforted by the familiar pattern. This circular philosophy created a sense of calm in the way he wrote Eldian history, making it feel less like a march forward and more like a quiet river curving back toward its source. Fact 143: Eldian food traditions were designed with warmth at their core. Isayama pictured kitchens filled with soft steam rising from simmering pots, herbs drying near sunlit windows, and wooden bowls carved by hand. Meals were imagined as slow, comforting rituals, broth shared on cool evenings, fruits gathered gently from orchards, breads baked with simple ingredients and patient hands. Though never shown, these culinary details helped him understand Eldia as a culture grounded in nourishment, not only of the body, but of memory and connection. So you stop reading for. In some of his earliest notebooks, Isayama sketched Eldian gardens where flowers grew in quiet clusters, chosen not for grandeur, but for meaning. He imagined blossoms that symbolized gratitude, endurance, hope, and gentle beginnings. He pictured elders tending to these gardens at dawn, the soft light touching leaves still heavy with dew. As the presence of these gardens, even if unseen, gave Eldia a serene emotional palette, a reminder that beauty often blooms in modest, steady ways. Fact 145: Isayama imagined that Eldian children learned their history not from structured lessons, but from shared moments, walking with a parent, listening to a grandparent, observing small seasonal traditions. He felt that knowledge passed gently is remembered more deeply. He pictured children sitting in grassy fields, hearing stories drift into their minds as naturally as the wind moves through tall meadow grass. This idea influenced the softness with which Eldian ancestry is portrayed, not heavy, not rigid, but passed along like a lullaby known by heart. Fact 146: Eldian myth included the idea of the listening tree, an ancient symbol representing patience and silent understanding. Isayama drew trees with wide trunks and long, sweeping branches that seemed to embrace the air. He imagined that people would visit these trees during moments of transition, not to seek answers, but to rest, breathe, and let their hearts settle. This idea became an emotional metaphor throughout Eldian lore, the belief that some truths arrive only when we become quiet enough to receive them. Fact 147: The Eldian sense of home was deeply important to Isayama's world building. He pictured houses built by generations of the same family, places where every corner held a memory, where wooden beams carried decades of warmth, and where the scent of familiar spices lingered in the air. He imagined small altars honoring ancestors, decorated with simple offerings like flowers, woven charms, or smooth stones collected from meaningful places. Home, to Eldians, was not just shelter, it was a living tapestry of comfort, gratitude, and continuity. Fact 148: Eldian history was shaped by what Isayama called soft lines rather than sharp ones. He imagined that their records were not precise chronological accounts, but gently told narratives filled with metaphor, symbolism, and feeling. He believed that remembering through emotion creates a different kind of truth, one shaped by compassion, understanding, and reflection. This approach influenced how he wrote the distant past of Eldia, hazy, dreamlike, intentionally blurred around the edges, like an old memory softened by time. Fact 149: Isayama's conception of Eldian art included sky lanterns released during certain festivals, small glowing orbs rising slowly into the night, carrying prayers or hopes whispered softly into their frames before ascent. He imagined families watching together as lights drifted upward, the sky becoming a quiet field of warm, floating stars. Though this visual never appears in the anime or manga, it guided the emotional tone of Eldian culture, a community drawn toward gentle expressions of longing and remembrance. Fact 150. Above all, Eldia served as a symbol of inheritance in the quietest sense. Not inheritance of land or authority, but of emotion, memory, and tender human connection. Isayama wanted Eldia to feel like the echo of a hand on your shoulder, the warmth of a familiar lullaby, or the comfort of hearing a story you've known since childhood. Through Eldia, he explored the idea that history is often carried not in grand gestures, but in small acts of care, the warmth of shared meals, the softness of repeated traditions, and the invisible threads binding one generation gently to the next. Fact 151. Late in development, Isayama described Eldia as a land of echoes and silhouettes, a phrase he used to remind himself that the ancient world should always feel slightly out of reach, like a memory half remembered upon waking. He imagined Eldian history drifting across time the way fog moves across a quiet valley, not fast, not forceful, but slow and inevitable, touching everything gently. This poetic framework shaped how he wrote the mythic past, subtle, atmospheric, warm around the edges, leaving space for imagination to wander peacefully. Or fact 152. When sketching early concepts, Isayama often drew soft horizons, imagining Eldian landscapes that stretched into dreamlike distances. He pictured fields moving like slow waves beneath the wind, distant tree lines dissolving into mist, and rivers following tender curved paths. These horizons became emotional anchors, reminders that Eldia's story was meant to feel vast yet quiet, expansive yet calm. They symbolized possibility, the open space in which a culture can grow, remember, hope, and gently transform across generations. Fact 153. Isayama imagined Eldian celebrations as events marked not by noise, but by light. He liked the idea of lanterns glowing along pathways at dusk, of windows shining softly with warm gold, of gatherings illuminated by candles whose small flames swayed when someone passed by. Light, to him, symbolized continuity, a delicate thread weaving through the past and present. These glowing details helped him envision Eldia as a place where communal joy was expressed through warmth rather than spectacle, through togetherness rather than grandeur. Fact 154. One of the quieter inspirations behind Eldian lore was the idea of shared breath, the natural rhythm that connects living beings. Isayama imagined families synchronizing breath unconsciously as they sat together in the evening, the way people sometimes do when they feel deeply at ease. Imagined elders closing their eyes to inhale the familiar scent of the earth after rain, and children breathing softly as they drifted into sleep while hearing stories whispered gently beside them. Breath became a metaphor for lineage, the way life flows from one person to the next. Fact 155. Eldian craftsmanship, in Isayama's imagination, was rooted in slowness. He pictured artisans shaping wooden bowls with patient hands, weaving tapestries thread by thread, carving symbols into soft clay, or binding books with cloth dyed in plant pigments. Nothing was rushed. Every object was a quiet offering to time itself. This artistic worldview shaped the emotional depth of Eldia, a civilization that honored the value of deliberate work, believing that anything made with patience carried a quiet blessing within it. Fact 156. Isayama envisioned Eldian homes featuring hearthstones, smooth pieces of local rock placed near warm fires to symbolize stability and grounding. Those stones, he imagined, were passed down through families, each one absorbing the soft glow of countless nights spent together. They represented a simple truth at the core of Eldian identity, that comfort is often found in small, steady things: a warm corner, a familiar object, a memory that has settled into the heart like a soothing weight. Fact 157. Even though Attack on Titan became known for its dramatic shifts and intense energy, Isayama retained a private affection for the gentle emotional undercurrent that first drew him to the story: the desire for a peaceful place to call home. Eldia allowed him to explore that longing symbolically. Through its traditions, its quiet landscapes, and its connection to ancestry, Eldia embodied a universal yearning, the hope that somewhere, in some corner of time, there exists a place where one can breathe easily and feel safely rooted. Fact 158. In some of his earliest notes, Isayama wrote brief poetic lines to help him visualize Eldia. Phrases like, "a place where dawn lingers a little longer," or "a land where history sleeps lightly," appear in the margins of his sketches. These poetic prompts gave him emotional direction, helping him imagine Eldia not as a concrete, rigid world, but as a feeling, a tender blend of nostalgia, calmness, and quiet wonder. These fragments guided him whenever the lore grew heavy, reminding him to soften the edges. Fact 159. Isayama often reflected on the way time weaves itself through generations. In Eldia's lore, he saw time as something gentle, like hands braiding strands of hair. He imagined ancestors watching over descendants, not through forceful legend, but through subtle presence, gestures learned unknowingly, songs hummed without remembering where they came from, blessings whispered into the world simply by continuing to live with care. Eldia, for him, was a meditation on how the past lives within the present in small, tender ways. Fact 160. As he completed the lore, Isayama realized that Eldia had quietly become a mirror for the story's deeper emotional themes: connection, inheritance, memory, and the gentle hope that people can transform the world by carrying forward the kindnesses of those who came before. Eldia stood as a reminder that history is not only shaped by grand events, but by soft choices made in quiet rooms, by the warmth families share, by stories passed along with trembling voices, and by the tender wish that someday the world might become a little more peaceful than it was before. Through Eldia's calm symbolism, Isayama gave Attack on Titan a quiet, shimmering heart, a place where even amidst complexity there remained a dream of gentleness. Thank you for resting here with me tonight, for allowing your breath to slow, your thoughts to loosen, and your heart to settle into something soft and unhurried. As we reach the final moments of this long, dreamy journey through distant histories, imagined worlds, and whispered memories, I hope you felt a gentle comfort weaving through each word, a reminder that even the most complex stories can glow with tenderness when held in quiet hands. As the night gathers around you, may you feel a sense of warmth drifting through your chest, like a small lantern glowing steadily against the softness of the dark. Let your shoulders release any lingering weight. Let your mind become lighter, like a feather resting in still air. Let each breath guide you closer to the peaceful place where dreams rise and fall like calm tides. Thank you for drifting with me. May your sleep be deep, may your dreams be gentle, and may your night carry you into a place of quiet rest. Good night, dear dreamer.